Hello, all the attendees. We are just waiting for one of our faculty to join. As soon as she joins in a minute or two, we'll start the case.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, madam.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
So I think we can just start in now. So
Yeah.
on behalf of Indian Academy of Pediatrics Pune branch, I welcome all the faculty for today's fifth clinical case presentation on behalf of the IIP Pune. So our respected faculty today is Dr. Sharad Agarkar sir from D.Y. Patil Medical College, Dr. Shakira Savaskar madam from Solapur, Dr. Rashmi Gupchup from Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital, and Dr. Vishal Soni from Armed Forces Medical College Pune. And our presenter will be Rizwana Sayyed, who is from Postgraduate Institute Yashwantrao Chavan Medical College. So I request Rizwana to share her screen and start presenting the case.
Sir, is my screen visible, sir?
No.
Rizwana, any problem?
I'm sharing the screen. Give me a minute.
This माहित नहीं आता. And she was actually doing it. She was able to do it.
Rizwana, any problem sharing?
Sir, is it still not visible, sir?
No, it is not visible, Rizwana.
Go to Zoom and click on the green share button.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And then click on the presentation and click share.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, just make it a slideshow.
Yes, sir. Yes. Is it visible now, sir?
Yes, you can start.
Good afternoon, everyone. About this case, chief complaints are: this is 14-year-old right-handed boy, fifth by birth order, born out of non-consanguineous marriage, hailing from Nanded. Mother is informed in this case. Came with chief complaints of history of difficulty in walking since 5 years of age. History of presenting illness. This patient was apparently all right till 5 years of age when mother noticed over a few weeks that child was walking on his toes. And this toe walking gradually progressed as follows. Toe walking was without support for initial till 5 years of age. Then he started requiring support to walk since 8 years of age. Since last 3 years, he's requiring support to stand after initial independent standing for few minutes. There is also difficulty in walking. This difficulty in walking is also associated with difficulty in getting up from sitting position and wearing slippers since last 3 years. It is not associated with difficulty in getting up from supine position. On inquiry, mother told that there is decrease in fluency and slowing of speech of the child since last 5 years. But he understands commands, like simple commands he understands well and responds appropriately for this. There is no history of difficulty in lifting arm above the head or combing the hair. There is no history of seizures or deterioration of memory or any emotional disturbances as noticed by mother or any involuntary movements or decreased vision or hearing. There is no history suggestive of cranial nerve involvement. There is no history of any bowel bladder complaint from the patient side. There is no history of loss of sensation or altered sensation. There is no history of swaying. Past history, medical as well as surgical. There is no history.
Can you just stop and go back to your first slide?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So you have seen the complete case and you have given us the complete history. Would you like to revise your chief complaints slightly? Look, chief complaints are something which the parents will just walk in and give you, and that is usually the starting point. That's the basis on which OPD diagnosis is made.
Yes,
So
sir.
some of which will be semantic, some of which is just English. So progressively worsening difficulty in walking and standing since the age of 5 years. Okay, or for the past 9 years.
Yes,
And the second is difficulty in speech.
yes,
So
sir.
that's a very important complaint which the parents have.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Number two, can you please describe the gait once again? Because your complete diagnosis and everything rests on that.
Sir,
So
mother,
Rizwana, I'd like to tell
Yes.
you three things.
yes,
Your history of present illness consists of 2 or 3 parts. First is the complaints. You have to elaborate on the complaints. So now you elaborate on the complaints. Then you complete the neuraxis. You have covered it partially, you did not cover it completely. Then you give us something which can lead you to the etiology. So based on your complaints and the neuraxis, you should be able to localize, and then you should be able to find an etiology for that. Then you tell about the complications related to that complaint. Okay, so now you start with re-describing the gait of this child.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Also, you have to, in the history itself, you have to tell us what is the present situation, whether the child has deteriorated more in the wards or child has improved or it is status quo.
sir, ma'am,
In the history itself, in the last, you have to tell us about this also. Whatever sir has told.
So I'll expand on what ma'am is trying to say, that you tell how did the problem start, how did it peak, and what is the current
present
status of the
status.
child. Okay, so that is, you have to bring it till today.
yes, sir.
So give it another try.
Sir, this child was completely all right. He was walking. He has achieved all these gross milestones appropriately till 5 years of age. And after 5 years of age, over few days, not suddenly, but over few days, mother has noticed that child is not walking properly. And then over few days, over few weeks, she has noticed that child now is not walking on toes. And he was walking on toes initially, but he was not requiring support initially. And later, as years passed, he started requiring support to even walk. And as the disease progressed, since last 3 years, means since 11 years of age, he is requiring support now even to stand. For initial few minutes, he can stand without support, but later, after few initial minutes of independent standing, he is requiring support even to stand. So this disease has started gradually. It has insidious course, and over this last 9 years, it has progressed in terms of not requiring support initially to requiring support to even stand now. So it has progressed. Insidious onset and chronically progressive disease it is. And now when child has come to the ward, he's having the same last complaint that he can stand for initial few minutes, but for later part he requires support. Sir. So it is insidious onset and chronically progressive disease, which has progressed over last 9 years. Hello.
So
Hello.
can you think about something which can line down the number of conditions which you can tell from the history?
So from the history, I can see that there is involvement of the lower limb, ma'am, because there is the toe walking, the typical history which mother is give, the specific history she gave us was of toe walking, and toe walking indicates spasticity, which is a specific or typical feature of upper motor neuron lesion. And she was not giving any complaint or any difficulty related to upper limb. So to ask, but still to rule out about that, we have asked about his complaints of upper limb. Is there any upper limb movement? In the next slide, I have asked about, is he having difficulty in keeping the hair, to know about the power of his upper limb muscle. In the on inquiry, already she has told about decreased history of decreased power of lower limb muscle has been given, that he can't get up from sitting position.
Okay.
He can't wear slippers. It indicates that distal muscles of the lower limb also have decreased power. But
Now,
upper, yes,
Rizwana,
yes,
Dr. Rashmi is asking you from the history, can you come for some differential diagnosis? Or how will you go about?
sir, up to here it is clear that there is toe walking, so it is spasticity. So there is upper motor neuron lesion. So upper ones from this
What
much
condition?
upper motor neuron lesion, but there is so I will have to think whether this upper motor neuron lesion, it is at the cortex level or it is at the spinal cord level. So this child is also having the difficult on inquiry, it has been told by mother that this child also has difficulty in speech. So speech is affected. It means there must be some cortical involvement. So this is upper motor neuron lesion, which is not at the spinal cord lesion. Not, we can't see because we are getting the clue here that speech difficulty is also there. So there is upper motor neuron lesion at the level of cortex. From this much history I can draw, and it is involving lower limb. If speech problem wouldn't have been there, I would have thought of some upper motor neuron lesion at the level of spinal cord, but there is affection of the speech.
But then you have mentioned there is no seizures, no deterioration of memory, no emotional disturbances, isn't it? So how many speech centers are there?
Sorry, ma'am.
How many speech centers are there, Rizwana?
Yes, ma'am. In the inferior frontal gyrus, there is a Broca's area, which is motor speech area, and in superior and in Wernicke's area is also there in superior temporal gyrus. So these two are the speech area, and there are
What
other
is affected you feel here?
As per the history, mother is saying that he can understand the commands well. It means his comprehension is intact. So Wernicke's area is intact, but fluency can be intact, and fluency is affected. So there is difficult. So articulation problem is there. So Broca's area can be affected now as per the history.
Any other, what do you say, any other structure in the CNS that can cause speech problems, or only these two will cause speech problems?
Cerebellum involvement can also cause speech problem, in which
Yeah.
there is staccato, scanning speech is there. Staccato and scanning speech is there.
And when you said cortical, I thought that you meant cerebral, not cortical, because cortex is gray matter, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, Rizwana, a suggestion over here.
Yes.
When you were telling us about the gate, you should have finished your complete power over there. That means you should have told us about distal and proximal of the lower limbs.
Yes.
You covered the distal and proximal of the upper limbs also. You covered the swaying also over there, because you're talking about gait also over there.
Yes.
Rather theoretical question over here. What does toe walking suggest, and what does difficulty in getting up from squatting position suggest?
Toe walking suggests that there is spasticity and
So it suggests hypertonia. Okay?
Yes.
So it suggests a problem of tone of the muscles.
Yes.
And what does difficulty in getting up from the squatting position suggest?
It suggests problem in decreased power of proximal muscles of the lower limb.
Fair enough. So what is tone and what is power?
Sir, tone is a sustained state of contraction of a muscle at its resting phase, or it is the resistance which is offered by the muscle when we passively.
Very good. Very good. And what is power?
So, power is the Sir, I'm
So,
not
so
very.
tone is at the resting stage,
Yes.
and power is when there's a voluntary contraction of the muscle. Okay, so that is the difference between the two. So whenever there's a voluntary contraction, you are checking for power. Getting up from the lying down position is power. But when he's walking and the muscles are in persistent hypertonia state, that is what is causing this thing. So you told us that there is a problem in corticospinal tracts possibly, with upper motor neuron kind of a lesion. There is some speech problem, and you're trying to localize it to the cortex. So what are the differential diagnoses? Because you have to take history related to etiology over here. You haven't taken any history related to etiology.
Sir, this child.
Because that you can take only if you have thought of some disease.
So this child was completely all right till 5 years of age, and after 5 years of age, these complaints started, or these complaints of difficulty in walking started over gradual periods. So it is and it has not started. So infectious causes is not possible in this case. Then any vascular cause is also not possible. Some cause which will have insidious onset is more possible in this case. Like vascular causes are also ruled out. Infectious causes are ruled out because there is no history of fever and it is not acute onset disease. Then any
So a lot of things are used. You told us a lot of things are ruled out. So what is ruled in then? You tell us those things.
degenerative diseases we can think, because child was completely degenerative diseases which have some of them have onset in the infantile phase, some of those have onset in the later childhood phase, and their onset is also gradual and their progression is also a chronic period. Degenerative diseases can be thought of.
It be neoplastic.
Yes, ma'am. Malignancy can also be one of the differential here. But a child will have other complaints also, like other extra CNS, other than CNS involvement. There will be some complaints, and child will be like.
Will it go on for 9 years, Rizwana? A malignancy?
Child will get hospitalized before only. Parents will not keep the child for 9 years at home, and it would have got diagnosed earlier.
But Rizwana, which malignancy will just give rise to toe walking and then speech and something like that, which is going on and on for 9 years? Mm-hmm.
So not likely, no, Rizwana?
Yes, it is not likely in this case.
Okay, Rizwana, while we are on DDs, what specific history of cranial nerve involvement will you take in this case? So the child has presented to you with corticospinal tract involvement.
Yes.
Primarily. Okay, from your history, it seems like that. Tone and upper motor neuron kind of tone and power involvement. So corticospinal tracts involved anywhere from the bed cells till the termination in the spinal cord. So what specific cranial nerve involvement will you ask for? Onset is at 5 years of age, and
Yes.
keep on justifying why you asking.
Sir, facial nerve involvement, I will ask if there is any there is deviation of angle of mouth.
Why are we starting with the median over here, or why are we starting from the 7th cranial nerve? Are you not interested in 2nd cranial nerve?
So actually, I will start taking history of all cranial nerves from first.
So tell me, I give you a situation that okay, the child has the parents say कि दिन में तो ठीक दिखाई देता है पर रात को लगता है कम दिख रहा है.
Night blindness, visual acuity or visual acuity, optic nerve involvement, I will ask.
So what am I hinting at when I ask this kind of history? And you are supposed to specify. If you haven't asked, you should be asking for this specific history. कि दिन में रात में दोनों टाइम बराबर दिखाई देता है कि ऐसा तो नहीं रात को बस बैठा रहता है जहां पे बिठा दो चलना बंद कर देता है. So what does it suggest?
Suggest night blindness, sir. And
Something to do with retina.
Yeah.
this is retinal degeneration, pigmentary degeneration.
Yes.
Yes.
Pigmentary retinopathy. Okay. So that will suggest the moment you get that kind of history, your neurodegenerative causes get narrowed down. There's certain specific conditions which will lead to this kind of a presentation. Okay.
Yes, sir.
What else will you ask?
About cranial nerve, sir.
Yes, we are still at crazy. They give you a lot of information. Just like you were interested in spinal cord, I'm interested in brainstem also. Isn't it? So you can't get away by saying that there's no cranial nerve involvement. You would like to know what all did you ask?
Sir, about cranial nerve involvement for third, fourth, and for first now, that is olfactory now, I have asked that is he able to understand different smells? Like ever that mother felt that he's not understanding the smell of the simple familiar things.
Okay, fair enough. Leave
Then
the
about
first
optic,
now.
then optic now, I have asked about the like visual acuity history. I have asked that whether he's able to, is there any deterioration in his vision? Means initially he was able to look from this particular distance and now he is not able to look. This I asked. Then
Okay, I say that the child has visual difficulty in vision also.
Okay, so,
Not necessarily night, but generalized onset at around 5-6 years of age, has developed some behavioral problems also, and is having difficulty in vision also.
sir, difficulty in vision can be because of pigmentary degeneration of retina, can be because of optic atrophy. So,
Okay, anything else? Anything else? He's developing hyperpigmentation also now.
okay, so he's developing hyper pigmentation. So, sir, cause I know is adrenal leukodystrophy.
So you will start thinking of a slow, it's not a classical thing that it carries on till 14 years of age, but there can be variants which can have a slow progression. Okay, so that is why your second nerve becomes very important. You cannot cross second nerve so easily. Historically, examination also will ask, but historically this is very important. Okay, then third, fourth, sixth.
For third, fourth, and sixth now, sir, whether he's having about his, like on examination when child comes to us, then only also we can observe that is he having any squint in their own language, local language.
Yeah.
We will ask the history of squint.
And how will you narrate it to the examiner in your history? So malalignment of eyes.
Yes,
History of malalignment of eyes. So that is the normal English that we say. So if squint is present, then it becomes a brainstem lesion. That means the brainstem is also involved.
yes.
Your DDs again change the moment brainstem is involved. Okay. Okay. Fifth, okay, fifth, it's very difficult to localize with fifth because the entire brainstem is covered. Seventh, if seventh is involved.
If seventh is involved on history, we will ask mother that is there any deviation of angle of mouth when child smile, or whenever he look up, frowning is there or not, or he can blow his cheeks or not.
Okay, no parents ask the child to look up and frown. Okay. So whether there is complete eye closure while sleeping or not.
Okay, sir.
Okay, सोते हुए आंखें पूरी बंद होती हैं कि खुली रहती है एक आंख. So that is the history for eyes. And then is facial asymmetry, which you said, and drooling from one particular angle of mouth. So that will suggest facial nerve palsy. Again, gets localized to your brainstem. Hearing. Did you ask, the child is losing speech. Did you ask specifically about how is the hearing of the child?
Yes, sir. We have asked that because we also thought that speech is impaired. So is it because there is some hearing impairment? We have history. Is he able to hear? And like, is there any decrease in his hearing capacity over the years since when these complaints of difficulty in walking has started? So mother has not specifically given, and they have never felt that he's having.
No, I'm not doubting that you haven't. Yeah, what? How will you ask? That's what ma'am has also asked. How will you ask?
Sir, means we have asked, sir, in Hindi should I say?
Whatever
Yeah,
language you're
It's a
comfortable in.
communication.
Yes.
मतलब पूछेंगे मतलब घर में जब टीवी चालू होता है तो बच्चा उसे ठीक से सुन पाता है कि नहीं, मतलब
Very
उसे
good, yeah.
अगर किसी रूम में है तो आवाज देने पर इजी मतलब वो does he move his head towards the direction of the sound or not, that we have asked. And
Okay, now there's another part to it. So this is that he's aware of the sound. Other is auditory agnosia. Is he able to follow the sound also properly? उसको बोला kitchen से पानी का jug ले आओ. Do you have to repeat it 3 or 4 times, or is he able to follow it in single command? Okay, he's a 14 years old, and you said that rest of the things are normal. So he is. So is he able to do that or not? So that specifically you'll have to ask him that. Okay, so 8th nerve is done. Then again, 8th nerve can be involved with adrenoleukodystrophy also. And there are so many other things, mitochondrial disorders and others where it can get involved. Then
there is a glossopharyngeal now, sir. Glossopharyngeal now.
So 9th and 10th are done together.
Sir. For 10th now in Marathi we ask that त्याला खाताना कधी ठसका लागतो का, for gag reflex in Marathi we ask like that. So yes, this is
yeah. So 9th and 10th are done together. Any nasal regurgitation
nasal
of
twang for voice we have asked.
Nasal twang.
Nasal twang.
Yeah. And 12th.
For 12th, sir. For 12th, sir.
14 years old child. 14 years old child. You're asking for 12th cranial nerve historically in a 14 years old child.
So
is he able to manipulate the food bolus in the mouth? जब खाना खा रहा है तो एक तरफ से, so when we eat we keep on moving the bolus of food from left to right, right to left when chewing. So that is the work of tongue, and tongue keeps on doing it. Okay, so that is what you. So cranial nerves over here was very important, and second is the most important cranial nerve. It gives you a lot of clues over here. So now tell us what are your DDs, and then we move ahead.
Sir.
So neurodegenerative, mat bolna. It's a very neurodegenerative is a volume of books. So what kind of neurodegenerative? Okay, is it a gray matter degenerative disease or is it a white matter degenerative disease primarily?
Sir, in this case, chief complaint is toe walking. That is because of which is a spasticity. And spasticity is a typical classical feature of white matter disease.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the white matter degenerative diseases which you think can have their onset at 5 years of age? Let's start from that. And they don't kill fast. It is lingering on for 10 years thereafter.
So,
because you'll have to take history for all those things.
Yes. Sir. So, sir, white matter diseases. There are different kinds of white matter diseases. So some are which are there is one adrenoleukodystrophy, sir.
Okay.
Adrenoleukodystrophy should definitely figure in over here. Okay. So then next, somebody else wanted to say something. I'm so sorry.
No, so carry on.
Then next, any other white matter degenerative disease that you can think of?
Sir, metachromatic leukodystrophy in its adolescent form, sir.
Okay, juvenile form of, it's not adolescent, it's called juvenile onset, MLD. Okay.
Then, sir, Alexander.
So the moment you say leukodystrophies, 3 leukodystrophies should always come to your mind: adrenoleukodystrophy, MLD, and Krabbe's. MLD and Krabbe's primarily are infantile onset, but they can have a juvenile onset form as well. Okay, and ALD is primarily a juvenile onset disease, but it can have a neonatal and infantile onset form also. So ALD, MLD, and Krabbe's are the 3 main leukodystrophies. Then thereafter, any other white matter degenerative disease that you can think of?
Pelizaeus-Merzbacher can also be there. It can present.
It is okay. Pelizaeus-Merzbacher disease, usually the kids do not survive beyond 2 to 3 years of age. So there is something called as Pelizaeus-Merzbacher-like disease. They can present a bit later, around 4 to 5 years of age, fair enough.
Alexander and Kahneman, I did not. Alexander, I ruled out because most of the child of Alexander, they die by 5 years. Crack die by 5 years.
Alexanders they can live till beyond adolescence also. So Alexanders can have the onset at around 5 to 6 years of age. Okay, but behavioral problems should have been a bit more prominent over here. So that's why we like to consider it a bit lower down. And juvenile onset Canavan's, okay, possible. Anything else which comes to mind actually first over here? With preserved cognition, only white matter seems to be getting involved. Little bit of speech.
Vanishing white matter disease.
Again, you should be giving history for that.
Yeah.
I would be asking you the history of all these things which you are saying. Your ALD, MLD, ab jo bhi bol rahe ho, soch ke bola karo. Somebody has written it also in the chat box now. So, hereditary spastic paraparesis or hereditary spastic paraplegia. That is a thing which should figure over here. Okay, onset around just before puberty. Very slow smoldering kind of a disease. So that also figures. So tell me, what history will you take for ALD? Adrenoleukodystrophy?
Infantile form of infantile form.
Not infantile. This child, 5 years old.
5 years old child. They present with 5-year-old child of adrenoleukodystrophy can present in status epilepticus, sir. Seizure.
No, it's a white matter disease. It's a white matter disease. Okay. So they can present just like the way you have described this child. Only thing is, as part of initially, many of these children present with a new onset ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity. Inattention, hyperactivity, because they start developing auditory agnosia. इनको सुनाई नहीं देता और फिर ये hyperactive होने लगते हैं. Okay. So, and hyperpigmentation of face, tongue, knuckles, the parents will come and tell you. Gradually, over 5 years से 10 years के बीच में, they will say कि पहले तो बहुत गोरा था, अभी इसका रंग सावला होता जा रहा है. Okay. MLD, there is no specific history. Krabbe's, there is no specific history for juvenile onset Krabbe's. Any specific, and of course, mitochondrial disorders will figure in every neurodegenerative thing. We'll not go into subtypes of mitochondrial disorders. So what will you ask for mitochondrial disorder? And you said a term called vanishing white matter disease. So what history will you ask for these two things?
For what, sir? For vanishing white matter and for mitochondrial.
Vanishing white matter and mitochondrial cytopathies. Both of them can lead to this kind of presentation.
So for vanishing white matter disease, there will be a typical history that it is episodic, sir. It get means there is episodically neurological signs of vanishing white matter disease are cerebral ataxia. There can be spasticity. There can be some, not necessarily, but sometimes there can be psychomotor delay. But typical history will be that the symptoms of spasticity, they are episodic in nature. They get aggravated whenever there is head trauma or whenever there is fever or infection.
So there is no history of waxing waning course and deterioration with any intercurrent illness. So this rules out your vanishing white matter and also some of your mitochondrial disorders. Okay. Then anything else? Hereditary spastic paraparesis. There are a lot of types, but anything in particular?
So hereditary spastic paraplegia, it can be pure form and it can be complicated form. So in pure form, symptoms will be spasticity, rigidity. Then there will be exaggeration.
No, tell me historically that what will you ask over here?
Historically, gait difficulties were there, but gait because of spasticity and rigidity, child falls repeatedly.
That is part of a gait problem. That is part of a gait problem. So over here, you should be asking any skin changes, any ichthyosis which the child is developing now. Okay.
Yes.
Any other skin changes, any vaccine course of hyperpigmentation or any skin rash which the child develops. So that you'll have to ask for over here. Okay.
Bladder
then-
involvement is more common. Bladder bowel involvement is also
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
quite a few
Has
number
she
of
mentioned that?
80% of patients
Yes,
of
right.
hereditary spastic paraplegia, bladder bowel involvement is
Involvement is?
in hereditary spastic paraplegia. Around 30% of patients of this disease have bladder bowel involvement. Not all, not very common.
So Rizwana, your history should cover your complete neuraxis, then about etiology, then about complications. Like I would be interested, does this child have recurrent respiratory tract infections? How's the sleep of the child? Does he have
Yeah.
constipation? Does he have any other behavioral problem? How is his feeding? Is he able to eat properly
Choking.
or not? Okay, so that becomes your complication part. Is he developing pressure sores? We don't know. Sensory part has not been mentioned that much over here. So all these, so history of complaints, your neuraxis, your etiology related history, your complication related history. That completes your HOPI. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Please go ahead.
Okay, sir. There is no history of bladder bowel involvement or loss of sensation or altered sensation. There is no history of swaying. Past history, medical and surgical. There is no history of previous admissions for any illness and patient is not on any medication. Family history, there is no history of similar complaints in any member of the family, including siblings, or there is no history of any death in the family due to any chronic illness of similar kind. So he's the first child in last 3 generations who got affected of this with these complaints. Antenatal and perinatal period of the child was completely uneventful. There is no history of poor feeding or irritability or excessive cry in infancy period and beyond that. Developmental history. Patient has achieved all milestones at appropriate age till 5 years of age and then developed progressive difficulty in walking, which we already discussed. In gross motor, latest milestone he achieved was hopping at around 4.5 years of age. In fine motor, he learned drawing different simple figures by 5 years of age. In language and social, he learned to speak poems. He used to play in groups. And he learned even dressing and undressing by 4.5 years of age. By 9 years of age, mother noticed gradually progressive worsening in fluency of speech and decreased word output, slurring of speech. Social interaction with children of similar age group never develop appropriately after 5 years of age. Immunization history. He has been immunized completely till date as per National Immunization Schedule. Dietary history as per 24-hour recall method. His calorie intake observed as per history it is 1800 kilocalorie per day with deficit of 200 kilocalorie per day, and protein intake is 42 gram per day with deficit of 10 gram per day. Socioeconomic history. His family of the child belongs to lower middle class of modified Kupuswami socioeconomic scale. So at the end of the history, provisional diagnosis is a 14-year-old boy with insidious onset, gradually progressive disease affecting central nervous system with involvement of speech, with arrest in social and language development, most likely degenerative disease, predominantly involving white matter, that too affecting lower limb without involvement of upper limb or bladder bowel or memory or seizures. So most likely differentials are: first is hereditary spastic paraplegia, complicated. Second is inherited disease with predominantly white matter degeneration. And third one is spinocerebellar ataxia.
Can you tell us points in favor and points against each of these?
Yes, sir. So first differential after history was hereditary spastic paraplegia, complicated. So in hereditary spastic paraplegia, child will be having symptom. He will be having signs of upper motor neuron lesion like spasticity, rigidity, and there will be spasticity. And this child is having the spasticity in form of toe walking. But in hereditary spastic paraplegia, here mentation of the patient is most of the time normal, but this as mother mentation is normal, but as mother has told in the developmental history that this child his social and language development after 5 years of age was not developed appropriately. Like so, but still we have kept this as a DD because in complicated form of the hereditary spastic paraplegia there is mental retardation. So we have kept this as a DD. Then inherited disease with predominantly white matter degeneration we are writing because because this disease, though it is inherited, because of de novo mutation, it can start at later age, like in this child, onset which has been at 5 years of age, and that's why inherited. Then we can explain inherited. Then white matter predominantly we are saying because spasticity in the form of toe walking is a typical feature of white matter disease which this child has, and we are using predominantly term because he's also having affection of speech. So there is some involvement of a gray matter. Predominantly, it is white matter. And sir,
Okay, Rizwana, I'll just interrupt over here. We don't want you to repeat the complete history over here. Okay. So if the now purely from the exam point of view,
yes.
If you're presenting this case in the exam and you tell me it is hereditary spastic paraplegia is your first differential, then it is very difficult to digest. Then every examiner will think you know the diagnosis. All of us in our careers would have seen very few cases of hereditary spastic paraplegia, while there are loads of leukodystrophies that we end up seeing. So a leukodystrophy, if it's a white matter disease, the first DD should always be leukodystrophy, depending on the age of onset. And the points in favor are that the child is presenting with predominantly white matter features, white matter signs. And the age of onset justifies occurrence of many of those white leukodystrophies. Next can be hereditary spastic paraplegia, because it's a relatively rare disease. So you would have to see about 30 adrenoleukodystrophies to see one HSP. It is that is usually the ratio that it follows. Okay, so HSP should come number 2 and leukodystrophy should come number 1, and it can be any of the leukodystrophies. So far we cannot comment, but it can be juvenile onset, as we said, Graves, MLD, or it can be adrenoleukodystrophy. Fine.
And so spinocerebellar ataxia we have kept because there is difficulty in walking. So this is one of the DDs we have kept.
Would spinocerebellar ataxia present with toe walking?
Sir, because there are many mutations of the spinocerebellar ataxia present. So in SCA1 and SCA3 there are pyramidal signs. So in which spasticity will be there. So that's why.
So it is less common, but okay, granted. At your level, we'll accept it. Please carry on.
Okay. On general examination, patient is conscious, well oriented.
I'm sorry. Would anyone want to clarify anything or ask anything till here?
It's okay.
So just for the benefit of postgraduates, can you differentiate between gray matter and white matter? Very basic question, but I think it is important.
Hello. Yes, sir. Sir, in gray, am I audible, sir?
Yeah, please carry on.
Yes.
Sir, in gray matter diseases, a major features of gray matter diseases are seizures. Then there is cognitive impairment. There is seizures. There is dementia. So, as there are seizures, EG will not be normal. There will be epileptic form waves will be there.
Stay clinical. Don't go to EEG.
Cognitive impairment, seizure, and dementia. And basal ganglia involvement can be there. Because this is also gray matter. So these are the signs of basal ganglia involvement are common in gray matter diseases. And in white matter diseases, spasticity is more common. Optic atrophy is common. Then in white matter diseases also there will be involvement of the there will be involvement of cerebellum, as in cerebellum, but cerebellar involvement will be earlier in gray matter and later it will be in the white matter. And ultimately, all white matter diseases later will they have involvement of the gray matter. But main feature of white matter disease is the spasticity and exaggerated dependent.
Okay, I'll clarify over here. So gray matter means it can be either a cortical gray matter or a subcortical gray matter. You mixed up the two things. Cortical gray matter is they can present with impairments of memory, impairments or behavioral abnormalities, and seizures. Subcortex is your complete basal ganglia, caudate, putamen, globus pallidus, thalamus, subthalamus, substantia nigra. All these are like subcortical gray matter. So these will manifest with your extrapyramidal features. They'll come with dystonias, with chorea. So that is also gray matter. So cortical gray matter, subcortical gray matter. Then there is white matter. So white matter universally, if it's an upper motor neuron white matter, they will present with features of human lesion, that is hypertonia, spasticity, and hyperreflexia. Along with that, they can have corroborating features depending on where the lesion has taken place. If it's in internal capsule, it's a dense hemiplegia. If it's in the brainstem, associated cranial nerve palsies will be there. So those things will corroborate. But otherwise, the primary finding is spasticity and hyperreflexia. And seizures, memory loss, behavioral abnormalities are for cortical gray matter, and involuntary extrapyramidal movements are for subcortical gray matter.
Rizwana, you told us that your third differential diagnosis is spinocerebellar ataxia. So what are the points in your history or in your patient that are favoring this DD, and what are the points that are very much going against it?
Ma'am, this child is having a history of toe walking, that is spasticity. So there are multiple mutations,
Okay, one spasticity, which is because of mutations, it is going in favor.
Yes.
Okay. What is going against?
There can be peripheral neuropathy is also seen in some mutations of the spinocerebellar ataxia. It can be motor or sensory, but in this child, up to history, at least there is no history of any sensory involvement. So it is going against spinocerebellar ataxia.
Okay.
Sensory involvement is not there.
Okay.
Should I proceed?
Yeah, please.
Rizwana, I have a small question. What is the current status of this child on history?
Ma'am, this child, when he has come to us, he's still having toe walking, requiring support even to stand. And then he has been started on symptomatic management to reduce the spasticity. So,
No. How is his swallowing? How is his breathing? How is his?
Ma'am,
can he take care of himself? Is he eating?
Yes, ma'am, he eats by himself because his upper limb involvement is not there. There is no difficulty in breathing, ma'am. His vitals are completely stable. So all lower limb, his bladder bowel habits are also normal. He understands everything. Only thing everywhere he needs help. So he's dependent on other for all motor activities, lower limb motor activity. For his mobility is dependent on others.
So why do you think only long tracks are affected?
Ma'am, because spasticity and corticospinal tract involvement can be the reason for as there is a sign of upper motor neuron lesion.
Only the lower limbs they seem to be affected. The hands are spared, the trunk is spared, and some amount of speech.
Yes, ma'am.
So does it fit into this? Which kind of white matter does it fit into? Only long track.
And eventually, currently his lower limb are affected. Upper limb involvement is not there. But if white matter gradually he might have in later life he might have involvement of the upper limb also. That we have kept white matter degeneration as one of the diseases.
Okay, proceed, sir.
On general examination, patient is conscious, well oriented to time, place, and person. He's afebrile. Pulse rate is 88 per minute, measured in right radial artery with regular rhythm, normal volume, without radial and radiofemoral delay. All peripheral pulses well fed. Blood pressure is 112 by 62 millimeter of mercury, being between 58 to 98 percentile, measured in right arm in supine position. Respiratory rate is 20 per minute without signs of respiratory distress. Saturation of oxygen is 98% in all 4 limbs at room. There is no pallor, cyanosis, clubbing, edema, jaundice, or lymphadenopathy. Anthropometrically, observed weight of the child is 35 kg and expected being 45. So as per IIP growth chart, weight for age is at 10 percentile. Height observed is 158, expected being 165. It is between 25th to 50th percentile by IIP growth chart. BMI of the child is 13.6, so he is underweight. Head circumference is appropriate for age.
Suppose, Rizwana, suppose he had macrocephaly or microcephaly, what inference could you draw? Or how will it help you if it was an abnormal head size?
In head circumference has importance if because I have kept one of my DDs as white matter degeneration disease. So in white matter degenerative diseases, we can approach white matter degenerative diseases on the basis of head circumference also. There are some diseases which have normal head circumference like adrenoleukodystrophy and metachromatic leukodystrophy. There is a disease by name Krabbe, which has microcephaly. Canavan and Alexander are having macrocephaly. So this way, head circumference is an important part of anthropometry to be checked in this case.
Good, go ahead.
Okay. Head-to-toe examination. Hair normal in color and texture. Contractures are present at bilateral knee and ankle joints. There is no hyperpigmentation. Pes cavus is present as shown in the image. Overlapping pores are present. There are no neurocutaneous markers. Systemic examination.
What does pes cavus suggest?
Pes cavus, sir, it suggests that abnormally a long longitudinal arch of the foot, sir. So in any child of lower limb spasticity or any cerebral palsy.
So we are in, yeah, please carry on.
Cerebral palsy child can also develop pes cavus later in the life, or any the child with spina bifida can also develop pes cavus later.
Pes cavus usually is not a finding in cerebral palsy. Spina bifida, yes. Spina bifida, yes. So what does pes cavus suggest? What does pes cavus suggest to you? It is very clearly visible. So the moment you see pes cavus, what will you see in the upper limbs? You'll think, okay, if the child has pes cavus, let me go to the upper limbs also and see.
Any wasting of some wasting of.
So there is, it suggests so pes cavus predominantly is a finding of neuropathies. Okay, and a LMN lesion. So there's a wasting of muscles which makes the arch of foot more prominent in these kids. So the moment you see pes cavus, you should say either present or absent hammer toe next, whether hammer toe is present or not. Then you should comment, however, in the upper limbs, there is or there is no loss of thenar and hypothenar eminences. Okay, so the moment you show pes cavus, we start expecting wasting.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Systemic examination, CNS examination first. Memory, immediate, recent, and remote memory intact. Speech, it is less fluent, slow, less spontaneous with decreased word output. Comprehension and repetition of words and sentences are intact. He can't read and write. Cranial nerve examination.
Okay, stop. Actually, high mental function was very important over here. Please go. So what all things will you cover in the mental function examination?
In higher mental function, we'll ask.
You have commented only on memory.
Memory.
What all things will you cover in the complete gambit of mental functions?
So handedness of the patient.
That was the opening statement. You said, handedness is not developed by mental function. No?
So, sir, memory, speech, intelligence.
So first is appearance. Is he appropriately, what is his appearance? Okay, he's a 14 years old child. In very young ones, the parents dress them up. But for a 14 years old, he has his own say. So how is the appearance of the child? Well kempt, unkempt. Okay. Next is behavior. How is his behavior? Does he have any autistic features when you are checking him? Is he hyperactive? Is he inattentive? Is he cooperative with the examination? Okay. Then is So appearance, mood, and behavior are usually covered together in children. Then you could talk about sensorium of the child. So what is the sensorium? In sensorium, you talk about conscious, oriented, memory, attention span, fund of information, insight, calculation. So all this for a 14-year-old child, you cannot just comment on memory and go away. So you'll have to comment on the child was well kept, cooperative with examination, and we did not notice any abnormal behavior during the course of examination. Okay.
Rizwana,
Was
you
he-
said, sorry.
Sorry.
Did she mention he never went to school or was never sent to school? Because she's mentioned he can't read and write.
Ma'am, he has been enrolled in school at 6 years of age in first standard in his village. But later he has been withdrawn from the school, and that was parental decision. So he has never been taught only his school performance. Like he has never been taught to read and write. So we could not test those things. That is the reason I have written here that he can't read and write. He has been enrolled, ma'am, in first standard, but later as he developed the difficulty in walking in initial phase only, his schooling has been stopped by the parents. So he has not attended school for more than few months now.
Okay.
Okay, so your high mental function should cover all this.
Yes.
What all things you ask in speech? Tell me.
Speech, sir. Speech. We ask about the fluency of speech.
So you always start with comprehension. That is the first thing you check. And you ask the child to tell his name or to tell a poem. Okay. So if he's able to do that, that means he's not heard you, he has comprehended you. That is the term. That is why the term is comprehension. He has understood what you have said. Okay. So comprehension. Next.
Fluency of the speech, word output, spontaneity.
No, next you ask for articulation. How's the articulation? Is the word articulated properly, or is he stammering? Is he not able to speak certain syllables? So then second is articulation.
Okay.
Third is fluency.
Okay.
Okay. Fourth is something called as prosody. What is prosody? Does his voice fluctuate while speaking? Kabhi unchi ho rahi hai, kabhi nichi ho rahi hai, which is a normal thing which happens with us. Or is it just a monotone in which he keeps on speaking? Which happens in some extrapyramidal disorders. Then is your reading, writing, repetition, and naming. Okay.
Repetition.
So first is comprehension. उसको सुनाई दिया कि नहीं दिया, उसको समझ में आया कि नहीं आया, समझ में आया तो उसने ठीक से बोला तो फ्लुएंटली बोला कि फ्लुएंटली नहीं बोला, फ्लक्चुएशन ऑफ वॉइस हुआ कि नहीं हुआ, फिर उसको रीड कराया, रिपीट कराया, नेमिंग चेक करी, राइटिंग चेक करी. Okay. And as ma'am said, he can't read and write. Basic things. What did you ask? 1, 2, 3 भी नहीं पढ़ पाया वो.
Sir, actually, he has been enrolled in school at 6 years of age. He has been taught, as mother was saying, that he had started writing, but within few months only he has been taken out of school. That was parental decision, and since then he has never been stimulated and never been encouraged to write. So at this stage, he doesn't remember also, sir. We have asked for that. And
Okay.
he
Fair
can't
enough.
write. So he has forgotten everything, whatever he has learned in initial few months.
Okay.
For 9 years. Should I proceed, sir?
Go ahead.
Cranial nerve examination. Olfactory nerve, he can identify and differentiate different smell by both nostrils. Optic nerve, his visual, his complete ophthalmic examination has been done. Visual acuity is normal. There is no visual field defect, no color vision defect. Fundus examination normal, and pupillary reflex are intact. Pupillary reflex was intact. For third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerve, coordinated movement of eyeballs in all directions present. Direct and indirect right reflex and accommodation reflex is present. For trigeminal nerve, sensation all over the face is intact. Then corneal and conjunctival reflex normal. Jaw jerk is also normally elicited. Facial nerve, he can close his eyes tightly.
How do you do conjunctival reflex, Rizwana?
Sir, for conjunctival reflex, we touch the wisp of cotton at the corneo-conjunctival junction, sir.
Tell me all the steps that you do to do a conjunctival reflex.
Okay, sir. Sir, first we explain this. If a child is 14-year-old, so so he can understand what I'm going my command. So I will explain him what I'm going to do. Then we will make sure that we will maintain all aseptic precaution while doing this examination. We will take sterile cotton, then we'll make wisp of that cotton, and then we will tell the child to look in front, and from the side we will go and touch the corneoconjunctival junction, and we'll look for the blinking reflex. So this will be.
So first important thing is the cotton should be slightly moist. You cannot use a dry cotton.
Dry cotton.
Okay, otherwise you'll leave part of the cotton on the eye conjunctiva of the eye of the child. Second, the child should be looking in the opposite direction. Otherwise, you'll touch the cornea, you'll damage the pupillary part. Because the general tendency is to look towards the object which is coming towards the eye. So you'll have to tell him specifically to look towards the opposite side and then bring the wisp of cotton and then stimulate. Otherwise, the child will end up having a corneal injury rather than a reflex. Okay.
For facial now, he can close eyes tightly. When he look upward, there is wrinkling present on the forehead. There is no deviation of angle of mouth on smiling. Test sensation has been tested on anterior 2/3 of the tongue, and they were intact. Then for vestibulocochlear, his hearing is normal. On eye examination, there is no nystagmus, there is no swaying. Then glossopharyngeal, for glossopharyngeal and vagus, he can say ah. On oral examination, uvula in the midline, and gag reflex has been tested as present. For spinal accessory, he can struck both the shoulders with resistance, against resistance also. He can turn head to both the sides against resistance. Hypoglossal nerve, on protrusion of the tongue, there is no deviation of tongue. Motor system examination. In nutrition, there is no muscle wasting. There is no asymmetry between muscle bulk of bilateral lower limb. Tone. In lower limb, muscles are hypertonic. On active and passive assessment of tone, muscles of lower limb are firm on palpation. This clasp knife plasticity is present at bilateral hip and knee joints. Upper limb muscles are normal in tone.
How will you check for tone? Tell me again stepwise. How do you assess tone of a child?
First step for tone, in inspection, we will look at the posture of the child, whether he's having any in younger children, whether he's having seizuring gait or frog-like posture. Then on palpation, we will feel, we will roll the muscles, and we will check. We will try to identify the feel of the muscle. Normally, muscles can be firm or stiff if they are hypertonic, or they are flabby if muscles are. So this we'll do in palpation. Then active assessment of tone, or we will ask the child to sit by hanging his legs side of the bed, and we'll observe the movement, and we will observe the movement of the distal limb. So excessive movement of the distal limb suggests that there is hypotonia. Again, on active assessment, sir, we will actively move the joints, and then we will look at the movement of the distal portion of the limb. For example, if for upper limb tone assessment, we will move the upper limb, and then we will leave it aside, and we will look for the movement of the beyond the wrist joint. In case of hypotonia, there will it will move for multiple times, and then it will stop. But normally it doesn't happen. In hypotonic child, it will be very stiff. There won't be multiple movement for the multiple times.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Other panelists can also. But as far as I know, active and passive tone is used specifically for the neonate and the early infancy. After that, we do not try to use the terms active and passive tone. And when we talk of tone, within the tone, you should talk on inspection. What was the position of the limbs? On palpation, the feel of the muscle. Was the feel of the muscle taut, or were they flabby? Next, the range of motion. Were you able to do the complete motion or not? Because here you will talk about contractures, if there are contractures developing, whether they are dynamic or they are fixed, whether you're able to do the complete range of motion or not. Then you talk about distal flappability. Then you talk about rolling of the legs. So when you are rolling and when you are checking for flappability, is it that the complete leg moves as a single unit, or the distal part is flapping separately and the proximal is flapping separately? Okay. And then you talk about, and then you say that there is hypertonia, possibly spasticity, or possibly rigidity. And the hypertonia has a modified Ashworth scale of this much. So what a modified Ashworth scale of hypertonia? So just like there is a scale for power, similarly there is a scale for spasticity and hypertonia. So 0 is the normal tone, no increase in muscle tone. 1 is when there is slight increase in muscle tone, but there's a catch initially, and the motion can be immediately completed. Then there's 1 plus. 1 plus is there's increase in muscle tone, catch, and there's some resistance which is thereafter through at least 50% of the range of motion. 2 is then there's increase in muscle tone through entire range of motion. 3 is when there is considerable increase in muscle tone and the movement is difficult. And 4th is a contracture is developed and the part is rigid either in flexion or extension. So your tone is actually at a postgraduate level, description of tone is very important. And you will be asked to demonstrate tone when you're doing, if the exam happens in person. Okay. So what is spasticity and rigidity?
So spasticity and rigidity both are the signs of hypertonia, but spasticity is due to pyramidal tract lesion. It develops due to pyramidal tract lesion, and rigidity develops due to extrapyramidal tract lesion. Spasticity is a velocity dependent hypertonia, and rigidity is not. It is not velocity dependent.
So what is velocity dependent?
Velocity dependence means in case of spasticity, which is velocity dependent, in which if I move the muscle slowly or if I move the muscles fast, it will that will affect the resistance that will affect the resistance offered by the muscle to if I offered by the muscle to active movements. So if I move muscles, I move the joint slow. I do the movement slowly against at the joint. So resistance felt will be less. If I do the movements fast, then resistance offered will be.
So when you increase the velocity of movement, the tone increases. That is velocity dependent. Okay. Yeah, please carry on.
Power. In lower limb, power is more than 3/5 in all group of muscles acting at bilateral hip joints. Power is more than 3/5 in all group of muscles at bilateral knee and ankle joints. Due to presence of contracture, detailed examination was impossible. In upper limb, large and small group of muscles of upper limb have power normal, that is 5/5. Reflexes, all superficial reflexes are normally elicited except bilateral plantar reflexes, which were extensive. Lower limb, deep tendon reflexes are exaggerated, that is bilateral knee as well as ankle reflexes, both are exaggerated. There is bilateral sustained ankle clone. All deep tendon reflexes of upper limb are normally elicited. Sensory examination. Light, touch, vibration, pain, temperature.
No, you didn't describe the gait of the child. The child had come with walking difficulties. If the child is ambulatory, your motor system examination should begin with gait. If the child is non-ambulatory, then your motor system examination begins with posture or bulk. So what is the gait of the child? Because that will give you the entire clue or to the diagnosis in this child. So if you haven't written it, you describe it. So what are the headings under which you'll describe the gait? So the first is stance. Okay, so how does the child stand? So when the child is sitting down, how does he get up and how does he stand? Tell me that.
So whenever child stands, he stands with the support and that too on toe. And while getting up from sitting position, also he flexes his knees or they not completely flexes his knee. There are contractures which are developed, so knee looks flexed, and he takes support of some object to getting up from sitting position.
Okay, so he gets up with support, fine, and then He stands with his legs far apart. Stands with his legs in the normal stance or close by.
We stand normally. The gate is not that gate is not very broad-based gate also. Only thing which
No,
is
we are still at stance. We're still at stance.
How
So he
does he
stands.
stand?
How does he stand? So he stands on toes, you said?
yes, sir, he stands on toes because
With buckling
contact.
of the knees? With buckling at the knees?
Yes, sir.
The knees stay folded. And there's buckling at the hip joint also. He would possibly be bending forward. From the description of tone and power which you've given us, possibly he would be bending slightly forward. He would be bending his knees and he would be, his toes would be in plantar flexion most of the times. Isn't it?
Yes.
So that is what you describe in the stance. Then the second thing you describe is the stride. That how does he take the stride forward? Is it the heel that touch first or is it the toe that touch first? And is it the normal stride कि कभी बहुत आगे पैर चला जाता है, कभी बहुत पास आ जाता है? So is the stride consistently normal or does it keep on changing all the time? And is it the normal heel to toe stride or the toe to heel stride? If you make this a habit, you will be able to. It's very easy to describe a gait. Okay, so in this case, it would possibly be the stride would be of a short length, and possibly he would be having toe walking because he's having contractures, isn't it? The third is, how are the upper limbs when he's moving? Are they moving normally, or is there paucity of the movement of the upper limbs?
Upper limb movements are normal, sir. Bilateral upper limbs are moving normally, sir. That has not affected.
Dr. Rizwana, can you show the video? I think
Show
it
the
will be a
video.
good idea to see the video.
Show the video. That will be better.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. This is the gate, sir.
Yeah, now you describe the gait. You're seeing the video. This is the gait of the child. You keep on describing it simultaneously.
Sir, this child stands as well as walk with support with on toes, sir, with on toes, and there is buckling at knee as well as knee joint, which is more prominently seen in the video, and he does not touch the heel to the ground while taking next step.
Okay.
And it is not consistent gait, right? The steps are different.
Yes.
Or they are identical. Just see the video again. He's walking on his toes, yes. Then continue the video.
Yes, sir.
Just play the video.
I think it has hanged. You can close the program and start again.
Restart.
So if the child is ambulatory, always describe the gait first. It will tell you everything about the tone, about the power, about the contractures. Every information comes. And in an exam, the examiners would have already seen the child walk in. So they would be waiting, when do you describe the gait? And they're kind of waiting for, because every diagnosis, the gait is able to clinch most of the diagnosis. Is there some amount of scissoring also taking place?
Yes, there is scissoring.
So that should come up in your description of gait. So the tone is increased not only in the plantar flexors at the ankle joint, at the flexors at the knee joint, flexors of the hip joint, and adductors of the hip joint. Because when you are planning the treatment for this child, you will have to address all these joints. Isn't
I
it?
think
So
the
it's
gate
not just an-
itself is telling, the gate itself is
Yeah.
explaining a lot of things. If you just had told the first posture of the child during examination, that how is he doing, I think a lot of things come out in his gait itself. Rizwana, go ahead.
Yes. In sensory examination, a light touch, vibration, pain, temperature, position sense, and cortical sensation were tested. Cortical sensation like 2-point discrimination and stereognosis, they were intact. In cerebellar signs, there is no titubation, no nystagmus on ophthalmological examination. There's no dysmetria, no intestinal tremors, no dyssynergia on knee heel test. Dysglycokinesis is not present. Pendular knee jerk is not there. Tandem walking could not be elicited due to lower limb spasticity and contraction, as the child was able to stand also for few minutes only without support, and he was requiring support later on, so we could not test the tandem walking here.
Okay,
Then
knee heel again cannot be done over here because the child has power of grade 3, you said, and has hypertonia. So there can be a lot of things which can interfere with the synergy in the knee heel test. Okay, so you'll have to say that it could not be done. How? Yeah, it cannot be. It can be explained because it was not done because of these reasons.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So he tried doing that, sir. Not with very good efficiency, but he tried doing that. So I mentioned that I will.
So the moment you have power abnormality or a tonal abnormality, so since they are not there in upper limb, you can go ahead and do dysthyrodocokinesia and dysmetria. But if they are present in the lower limbs, it will be difficult to perform and interpret the signs.
Cardiovascular system examination, S1, S2 heard, there is no murmur. In respiratory system examination, on auscultation, air entry is bilaterally equal. Abdominal examination is also normal. It is soft, non-tender, and there is no organ. Final diagnosis, 14-year-old boy with insidious onset, gradually progressive spastic paraplegia with involvement of speech and social.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Should I continue? Gradually progressive spastic paraplegia with involvement of speech and social language development arrest without involvement of upper limbs, cranial nerves, bladder, bowel, vision, and cerebellum. So anatomically, it is predominantly white matter disease. Etiologically, it is degeneration. Functionally, child is in gross motor functional classification level. So differential diagnosis at the end of history and complete systemic examination. First is hereditary spastic paraplegia complicated, and second, inherited disease with predominant white matter involvement.
Okay, whenever you keep HSP as one of the DDs, you should always keep Friedreich's ataxia as being one of the DDs. Okay, that is the thumb rule that is followed.
Okay, sir.
May be correct, may not be correct, but you should always screen for heart properly. Okay, the moment you say hereditary spastic paraplegia can be a possible diagnosis, you always go ahead and check for Friedreich's ataxia also. You don't get a genetic testing done, but you check glucose, you check for the cardiac status, always. And you keep it as one of the differential diagnoses. Okay? So functional kya bola aapne?
So functionally, this child has developed difficulty in walking. So how he has functionally, how functionally disabled he has become.
So tell me the functional component of your diagnosis. So it is functional, anatomical, topographical, and etiological. So tell me the functional component. You have written just GMFCS 4. What is the functional diagnosis in this child?
So functionally.
So functionally will mean what all functions are affected, what all parts are affected. So he has involvement of both the lower limbs, complete sparing of upper limbs.
Weakness as well as.
So there is no. So there is paraparesis. What kind of paraparesis is it? Spastic.
Spastic.
So it is spastic paraparesis, GMFCS level 4, with impaired speech. And if he has features of malnutrition, then you mentioned that also over here. Because whatever you mention in functional, you have to address that. Okay. So if he has spasticity, you have to address spasticity. If he has nutritional problem, you have to address nutritional problems. If he has sleep problem, you have to address sleep problem. If there's constipation, you address constipation. So you have to list out everything which is affecting the functioning of the child in the functional part of the diagnosis. Okay.
Okay, sir. In course in hospital, ophthalmological examination was done, which was completely within normal limit. The nerve conduction study was within normal limit. Electromyogram, MUAPs were large amplitude with large duration. Then intelligence evaluation has been done. On Binet Kamen test, this child's mental age is 4 years 6 months, and intelligence quotient is 32, which indicates there is severe intellectual disability. On Vinland social maturity scale, social age is 4.5 years, and social quotient is 32, which indicates low social adaptive functioning.
So if you go back to the parents, is it that the child was taken out from school because he was having poor scholastic performance, or because of any other reason? Because he was cognitively not so sharp. So that you can check out with the parents, isn't it?
Yes, sir. So we have asked for this history, but the duration for which he has attended the school has been very small, sir, around 5 to 6 months only. And
But
then-
he was cognitively abnormal, so the parents probably decided that he would probably not attend the school. One was physical disability.
Yes,
He could not go to the school. If the school is very far away, then the parents would have to carry the child to the school, isn't it?
yes,
And second part is, once the child reaches the school, he has to be able to understand what is being taught, isn't it? So these are the two components that are probably important.
yes. Next, imaging studies were done. So MRI brain, these are the coronals. First one is the coronal section, in which with yellow marker it has been shown. These are the ill-defined patchy confluent hyperintensities in bilateral centrum semioval and in the periventricular white. This has been shown in the MRI brain image. These are a few more sections of the MRI brain. Few more sections.
Sir, at this stage, what other studies we can do apart from the MRI brain? Would you do an EEG?
Hello.
Would you do an EEG also? MRI ka jodidar?
Yes, sir. EEG also we will do, because electroencephalogram most of the time, but white matter diseases have normal findings in EEG studies.
Here there are no seizures, no?
Because seizures are not a feature of white matter. And if we are suspecting any white matter disease, so biochemical investigation also we can send to look for particular enzyme deficiency. Biochemical investigation also we can send, other than.
So if you are suspecting, say, ALD, what test will you do?
ALD, if we are suspecting, then for ALD biochemical, so we will look for elevated very long chain fatty acids in the leukocyte and cultured fibroblasts. So that biochemistry examination I will do, sir. For MRI brain also in ALD we do in specific feature, specific hallmark of adrenoleukodystrophy on MRI brain is it involves demyelination is mainly involve bilateral parieto-occipital region. And so MRI brain in adrenoleukodystrophy and biochemical studies.
Just a correction over here. It is not demyelination, it is dysmyelination. Demyelination means that the myelin which is getting formed is normal, and that is getting damaged. Dysmyelination is what happens in most of the inherited diseases, that the myelin which is getting formed is abnormal, and that is causing the problem. Okay, so all the leukodystrophies have dysmyelination. All the hypomyelinating disorders have got a decreased myelin which is getting produced, and demyelination is सब कुछ ठीक है पर माइलिन जो बना वो खराब हो गया, बॉडी ने खराब कर दी.
Okay.
Should I continue, sir?
I have one question. Why is the intellect so much affected? IQ was something like 32.
4.5. Yeah.
Is it part and parcel of this white matter, or is now gray matter is getting involved? I mean, this is my genuine question. I don't know really.
In complete history, ma'am, there was only one time, once we have been told on development history, we could see that mother was saying that after 5 years of age, his behavior has grown up. His behavior has not matured enough appropriately with the age. Mother was saying he still plays with the. He's more comfortable. He's more comfortable with the children in the age group of 4 to 6 years or around 6 years of age. So that's why we have sent this child for intelligence evaluation, and this was the result. So there predominantly white matter signs with which child has come up, symptoms with which child has come up. But now
I got it. Let's ask Vishal sir. What does he want? What is his take on this?
No, ma'am. Gradually, even in the white matter disorders, subsequent, matlab, over the course of time, they will develop intellectual disability.
Yeah.
So it is like with gray matter, gradually white will get affected, and with white matter, finally the gray matter will get affected. Yeah. And the second part is because of the white matter abnormalities, the stimulus to the brain. It is not just that the gray matter gets affected. The feedback by the sensory pathways, it also gets impaired. So that will lead to lesser stimulation, and it will add to the intellectual disability which many of these kids have.
How do you explain the specific affection of speech in this, Dr. Vishal?
Again, speech is possibly it will worsen further, ma'am, and he will gradually sooner or later develop dysarthria. So speech is again, so far the cognitive part of the speech is affected because he's able to understand, but for the volume volume of speech, he has to search for words because his cognition is impaired. And gradually, other parts of the speech will also get affected.
But speech got affected quite early on, is it?
Speech, yeah, from 10 years of age, speech has got affected.
Okay.
In fact, what is surprising is with hypomyelination, usually some eye signs come up. Okay, some kind of an abnormal eye movement, some oculogyric crisis, some nystagmus. If this kid, if everything was same, and there was addition of nystagmus in this child with spasticity, then it was a hypomyelinating disorder right from the beginning. Then, and if the age is less than 2 years of age onset, then it is Pelizaeus-Merzbacher. Otherwise, it's a hypomyelinating leukodystrophy, which looks like PMLD, what we call that. Yeah, please carry on.
Yes. When a clinical exome study was done by next generation sequencing, it has shown it has given diagnosis as hypomyelinating leukodystrophy 6 caused by heterozygous mutation in the TUBB4A gene. So this child has been then started on symptomatic management with skeletal muscle relaxant, then vitamin supplementation has been started. And prognosis has been explained to the relatives. So these all investigations we have done during course.
What else can you do for this child apart from starting drugs for spasticity? What else can you do?
Yeah. What is your line of management?
Yeah. Only drugs is there, or there's something else also?
The contracture this child has developed, these contractures are not completely fixed. These are dynamic contractures. So physiotherapy can help this child, sir. Physiotherapy to increase the range of motion. So physiotherapy is one of the options which we can do. Then nutritional supplementation. Then
any injectable drug that can help the child? Any local injection if you give in the tendon?
Botox.
Yeah, botulinum you can use. What is selective dorsal rhizotomy?
Sorry, sir.
What is selective dorsal rhizotomy? Again, it is done to decrease the tone. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right.
Okay, sir.
It's like a surgical intervention where the neurons that cause the hypertonia, kind of you cut them off selectively so that the tone decreases. And also surgical correction can be done. Sometimes they do Z-plasties and all in the tendon. Okay, more done in actually children with spastic diplegia. They have better prognosis. Here it is a progressive disease. Okay, so there are other options. This question will be asked usually in cerebral palsy.
Okay, sir.
Okay, for tone management.
Okay, sir.
So no, even over here, what are
Nutrition? Yeah, nutrition is very important. Okay, so you take care of the nutrition. If he's not immunized appropriately, you'll immunize. These are all important things
Yes,
apart from the neurological management.
yes.
so Rizwana, I'm
Somebody
still not
wants to
happy
know.
with.
There is one question in the chat section. Somebody wants to know what is the genetic counseling that can be done. Is it autosomal dominant? Is it autosomal recessive? What is it?
So we have sent actually the exome sequencing for the parents. We have sent.
Mm.
It is awaited actually.
Is it supposed to be autosomal recessive or something? Or
Not sure about this one.
Sir, I have kept.
So, Rizwana, go ahead with the management. What are you to do now?
Management-wise, symptomatic management has been started for this child. He has been advised physiotherapy. He has been sent home with the nutritional supplementation and skeletal muscle relaxation as he was tolerating those drug. So we have increased. We have followed up this child after 1 month. He has given history that he is improving. His leg movements, range of motion in his own terms is improving. So we have increased the dose of the that skeletal muscle relaxing, and now we are about the disease about parents exome genome sequencing we are sent. So currently physiotherapy, symptomatic management, and nutritional supplementation. These 3 things we are doing right now.
What about the prognosis?
Prognosis wise, current as we can see from the history and examination and from the investigation reports that he has white matter and his gray matter involvement has also started. So prognosis will be poor as if because later on there will be another sign another features of gray matter will also get affected, like cognition has already affected, speech has already affected, so seizures he can develop, so seizures and dementia they can develop. So every time management will depend on that particular symptom. So prognosis of this case will be poor, ma'am, as gray matter involvement will increase in future.
Okay, Rizwana, I'll just correct you at one point that physiotherapy will mean over here telling this child about physiotherapy, including use of orthosis at the night time, because he has already developed contractures. So orthosis are very important. If there's any worsening of contractures, he will not be able to stand also. His center of gravity will fall forwards. Already there's a contracture which is developing at the hip joint also. His center of gravity, the moment his center of gravity moves ahead, he will not be able to stand even with support. So use of orthosis, what muscle relaxants can you think of? You've used this term 2 or 3 times.
Baclofen we have started for this child. Then dantrolene sodium we can use.
We don't use dantrolene normally. So what do you use normally? Talk of those things. So one is baclofen. Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
Botulinum injections.
Okay, that is a local injectable. You're talking of, okay, they can be systemic, they can be local, and they are surgical therapies, which have already been spoken about. So local, you have told injection, Botox, and anything else which can be given in injection, which is much cheaper than Botox. Not used much nowadays. Phenol, injection phenol, it was used to be injected earlier. And anything in oral apart from baclofen which can be used? So what receptor does baclofen act on? So it acts on the GABA B receptors in the spinal cord, which is the other agent which acts on GABA receptors, which is used very commonly. You would be writing it for every other kid in neurology. So all the benzodiazepines act on GABA receptors.
Clonazepam, commonly used.
So that can be used. And tizanidine is used. So baclofen, tizanidine, and this thing, benzodiazepine. Okay.
Then after that, you're talking about nutrition. Important question from Dr. John. Would there be any role for screening spinal cord before testing exam? I'm just reading out his questions, which is there in the chat box.
We normally do a screening MR of the spine also in such situations when we had kept a possibility of hereditary spastic paraparesis. So it is usually MRI brain with screening of spine. Screening of spine.
It was done in this child. It was normal.
It was done. It was normal.
Dr. John also feels that it's an autosomal dominant, likely to be autosomal dominant. He's commented like that.
Yes, ma'am. Most of the top 4A are dominant de novo mutations, most of them.
In that case, the parents may not need any genetics, is also what he says.
We normally, it's more of an academic exercise at times, but if the parents
want another child.
Want another child.
Yeah.
Because it's a spectrum, and for the same genetic mutation, somebody may have a very severe disease and somebody may start manifesting after 20 years of age, depending on the penetrance of the gene. So if they want another kid, then we usually go ahead and do the complete workup for the parents and then for the fetus if needed.
Okay.
Any other questions, any residents, those who are attending, if you want to ask anything? Or any comments, anybody thinks, or anything that
I want to ask you, sir, what are the common abnormalities of speech that you come across in pediatric neurology? One is if you have a cerebral disease, you'll have a scanning type of speech. Or what are the other types of speech disorders that you commonly see in pediatric neurology? Speech
disorders, okay. The commonest one that we see is spastic speech, where they know how to speak and they know the words, but just like when they're trying to make a movement, initially there is a slow thing, and then after that catch is released, they are able to say the complete word. Ba hat jana. Initially there will be a long stretch for the initial ba, then suddenly har ekdam se ho jayega. So that is one part. Other is an extrapyramidal speech in which just like the kids are having dystonia and there's a continuous movement taking place of the limbs, similarly speech also keeps on moving. So they would not stop at a full stop. They will stop anywhere in between. And suddenly they'll start moving. So like hypomyelinating leukodystrophy caused by, so the speech also, because of the change in tone consistently, it will keep on changing gradually. So actually, these are the two main types of CPs that we see, spastic CP and extrapyramidal CPs. So the speech problems are also almost parallel to that. Cerebellar speech only in degenerative disorders that we come across. I hope
Vishal sir, the question is, are there any demyelinating features where they just stop at a level and don't progress? So non-progressive leukodystrophy, is there anything like that?
No, ma'am.
They all
leukodystrophies will progress.
All progress.
Leukodystrophies
Depending
will progress.
Upon the, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. the rate of progression may vary
It's
from one child to another.
Yeah.
So you also would have come across adrenoleukodystrophy presenting at 14, 15 years of age.
Yeah.
And but yes, all of them keep on progressing.
So they become wheel bound for a while and then go on for the total bedridden life.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Like we have a adrenoleukodystrophy child who is now almost 13 years of age. He still continues to walk. Now he's like now vision is gone, so he finds it difficult to walk. But otherwise, he's able to stand and walk normally, but for the vision.
Okay.
What is the difference between a leukoencephalopathy and a leukodystrophy?
It's for me.
Yeah. So it's fine.
So leukoencephalopathy means it's a gray and white matter both. And leukodystrophy is it will stay a white matter disease till the very end. So leukoencephalopathy is something like let's say some of the gangliosidosis, mitochondrial leukoencephalopathy. So it is usually a metabolic disorder which will cause damage to the white matter as well as to gray matter, but white matter more than gray matter. And leukodystrophy is generally a myelin-related problem, and gray matter will get involved only in the terminal part of the disease. Like metachromatic leukodystrophy, they'll keep on walking, the walking will deteriorate, everything will stay normal till very late. And only then their cognition and other things start getting affected.
Vishal sir, any recent gene studies being done for gene, I don't know, what is it called?
Ma'am, nowadays what's happening is exome sequencing has become very cheap.
Yeah.
So everything which was in between has been kind of, so a lot of times after MRI, the patient comes to us with the genetic report straight away.
Yeah.
So, and many a times it is a variant of unknown significance, and it's a long battle after that.
Yeah.
But exome sequencing has become very affordable. Not exactly affordable, but yeah, it's become more accessible.
Cost effective.
Cost effective is right, possible.
Is there any role of neonatal diagnosis?
Neonatal diagnosis, fetal diagnosis, ma'am, if the parents want another child, what we would have done over here is then we would have tested both the parents. If the parents are carriers of any of the gene, then we do a fetal testing. If the parents are not a carrier, then we do not do any fetal testing. Because we already have 3 or 4 girls before this kid who are absolutely normal. So we expect this, and the parents also are possibly not manifesting any features of white matter disorder, then possibly it's a de novo mutation.
These metachromatic leukodystrophies, they present in a wide range, what we have seen. We have 2 children who have gone bad very fast, maybe in first 3-4 years. And there is one child who is still there, he is 16 years old. He's having difficulty in walking, but he's still, other things are not involved.
Yes, ma'am. Metachromatic leukodystrophy actually has an infantile onset, juvenile onset, and something in between. So the infantile onset, they usually go by about 4 years of age, maybe by 5 maximum. The juvenile onset, they can linger on for a very long time. So juvenile onset may have the onset of the disease at around 6 years. It will look almost like adrenoleukodystrophy, but usually white matter and auditory problems are not that prominent in these.
Vishal sir, can we say that the time of onset actually does do some amount of prognosis? Does it affect the course of progress? The
course
time
of disease?
Earlier the onset and early progression.
Honestly, I don't know the answer. Honestly, I don't know the answer to this one. But yes, it tells us definitely, those who have a younger onset, less than, now that since you brought it up, less than 1 year, they usually live for about 3 or 4 years of age.
Yeah.
And those who have the onset around 6 to 7 years, they live for another 7 to 8 years of age. So maybe yes.
So Madhu? Is Madhu there?
So
I think that was an excellent,
Excellent, yeah.
discussion. It went extremely well.
Yeah.
Rizwana, thank you so much for presenting such a lovely
Yeah, very well presented.
very well presented. This was a very difficult case for a student of your age, without any doubt. And thank you, her mentor, Dr. Rajesh Kulkarni and Dr. Ambike. Thank you, Savaskar madam. Madam, do you want to say anything about how you felt and how it can be improved further? Madam?
Yeah.
Savaskar madam? Madam, unmute yourself, madam. Madam, please unmute yourself. Yes, madam.
Only thing, the intellectual disability, what was there was very high, which you should have been highlighted in the history itself. That there was some intellectual disability in this child. Otherwise, the whole history, we thought that intellectually the child is normal. Mentally the child is normal. But it was a really, when I came to know it is 32%, then something should have been there in the history about it.
this mother, ma'am, we asked her how is the child mentally, and she said he is quite all right. He is like other children.
Okay.
So and the history was very difficult to elicit.
Okay.
Very difficult, parents. But yes, ideally, I think she should have said
It was a
something.
very nice discussion, and
Yeah,
I came to know so many new things. Thanks a lot.
Thanks to Dr. Vishal.
Thank you, Dr. Vishal,
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
all the faculty.
Thank you very
very
much.
much.
It was great.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you. Thank you.
Should I leave?
So that concludes the session, ma'am. I think yes. Let us conclude. Thank you very much, Rizwan.
Thank you, sir.